Hi everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for novices and masters alike. I am Dan, my co-host is of course line developer Josh.
Indeed.
For Earthdawn 4th edition, and on today's podcast we will be discussing all things thaumaturgical, oratorical, and illusory, because today is all about Illusionists.
Misdirection.
Oh, look, over there. Just kidding. But if you have any questions for us, we'd love to hear we'd love to hear any feedback, positive, negative, and we'd like to answer your questions as they come in. We did a whole bunch last episode, so contact us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. But otherwise, do we have any announcements we want to make first before we dive into the imaginary pool?
We mentioned at the end of last episode that the Kickstarter for Empty Thrones is live and going. As of the release of this episode, it would be about halfway through. It is scheduled to run until...
End of July?
July 31st at 9 p.m. So
Nice.
basically, it will close out the month of July.
And they'll be in your mailbox August 2nd.
No.
Just kidding. That was the illusion. That was the verbal illusion.
The PDF version will be delivered just as soon after that as we can get it done. We turned around the Iopos book really quickly, and we're looking to do Empty Thrones the same. That may even turn around a little bit faster because it was in somewhat parallel development, and so a lot of the production work is...
concurrent.
You know, in terms of artwork and whatnot, is already underway. So anyway.
Yeah.
But no, yes, it met its goal very quickly. It is achieving stretch goals, and... we're really excited to release. I can't wait till we get a little bit further on into the process and maybe get the book out so that I can talk more about like the thought process that went into it and cool stuff.
Yeah. So
some of which may have already been talked about on the updates to the Kickstarter. So even if you have not backed yet, if you follow it, you should, I think, maybe
be getting an update.
Maybe getting updates? I don't know how it works with Kickstarter. I don't think you get updates if you did not... Well, what you can do is you can the money doesn't get collected until the end. Yeah. So you can just pledge like $1. Mm-hmm. And if you actually back, then you get every update that goes out.
Yeah.
And you just get it in your email box and you can see it. So
worth every penny.
You can go to the Kickstarter page.
Worth every penny for $1. You get all the information that's coming out anyway. So.
And if you cancel before the end, then you don't pay anything.
Because one stretch goal has been met. Do you want to tell people what it is?
The first stretch goal has been met. Yeah, the first stretch goal, which is a poster with special art that is being done by our art director, our new art director, James Austin, mm-hmm. who has done amazing work getting artists wrangled and providing artwork himself and stuff like that. He has been phenomenal, and we're so happy to have him, and he is incredibly eager and asks great questions, and we have great discussions, and it's great to work with him. I'm really happy with that.
Cool.
And he is doing... I am not going to reveal here what the artwork is, because it is a minor spoiler for some of the content in Empty Thrones.
That's okay.
So I'm not going to talk about that here.
Nope, no spoilers.
We did see sort of the preliminary sketches in our developer meeting last night, and it's kind of cool. Disregard the discussion on the Facet Discord about the poster being a pinup of Uhl, dressed either as depending on who initially told it, a pinup of Uhl either dressed up like Sting as the young Harkonnen in David Lynch's Dune.
Wow,
or
that's a stretch.
Or alternately,
idea.
And the one that I think is perhaps even more disturbing is Uhl in the outfit that Sean Connery wore in the movie Zardoz.
Oh, good gravy! I have a friend that is, I can't say a Zardoz fan, but he owns the movie on DVD. And he's passed it around, and I have refused to watch it because I know exactly how horrible it is.
No, that is not accurate.
Just go look up the poster of Zardoz. You'll know exactly what it is. It is not.
Yeah. In fact, Uhl does not appear on the poster at all. The second stretch goal, which is possibly reached at the time this episode goes live, based on the rate we're going,
more than likely,
is going to be a set of personality cards. Basically, because we're commissioning art for all of the major NPCs and several of the minor ones to go in the book, we are going to be releasing a deck of 46 like sort of trading card size cards that will have the artwork on one side for the character and a few stuff on the back. That basically, like, if you are running the adventures or you are adventuring in the places where you are, the game master can pull out the card and say, and here's what they look like, without needing to, like, flip in the book and show the page and stuff like that. They will have an actual card. And if these do well, we will, because this is the first time that we're doing cards, we will investigate doing cards for other stuff.
Yes. So Earthdawn trading cards.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, been a while since we've had those. So
anyway, check out go find the Kickstarter, Empty Thrones on Kickstarter, and more info is there. And if you can't find it for some reason, we've got links a bunch of places as well. So anyway,
should be able to find it. Should be able to find it. So on to Illusionists. I have one player who has played a Windling Illusionist for a number of years and has just dusted them off again to rejoin our group after a small hiatus. Cool. So that character I find to be a lot of fun. I don't play that character, but I find that character to be a lot of fun the way that my friend plays that Windling Illusionist.
Yeah, Illusionists are another magician discipline. They are the third that we have talked about in our series here.
Yep.
They are, as the name implies, masters of illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And connected with that, deception and misdirection and mental magic.
Yes.
Basically magic that deals with perception and one's awareness of surroundings and things like that. Illusions are tricky.
They're almost like the practical jokers.
Illusionists can be seen as like practical jokers, tricky, like annoying characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like there can be that aspect of them if you've got somebody who leans really heavily into the prankster, practical joker
type
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I was actually getting towards was illusions as a concept,
yes,
as spells and so forth, can be a difficult... When I said tricky, I was not meaning like, oh, they're tricksy.
Sorry.
I was thinking more like, they can be a difficult... Well, that was a poor choice of words on my part. They can be a difficult thing for a game master to have in the game because of the way that the mechanics work. And the mechanics for illusion spells have changed a bit over the various editions as things have worked or not. And I had a blog post that I wrote for the developers, the Facet Games blog, about illusions and stuff like that. Because illusions, I think more than any other school of magic, bring up the most questions and debates and discussions.
I can see that, yes.
Because of that. And the changes to 4th edition for the way that illusion spells worked, we kind of divided them into two different groups and also laid down some things about how disbelief works for it and sensing illusions. And that's, it can be an awkward situation.
Fair. And we'll save that discussion for slightly either later on in the episode or a whole other episode.
Either depending on time, whether we get into this episode or when we talk about illusionist spells, which we do have on the slate to talk about as a dedicated thing in the future. We may prep. I may prep a little bit more for that to talk about it a bit more focused rather than being off the cuff, because it is an area that requires a certain amount of care and precision when you're talking about it, and I am just not in that headspace right now.
Which is fine. You wrote a blog post about it. If all else fails,
I will at least link the blog post in the show notes, and you can go find that blog. I need to track down the link.
Hopefully, no answers will happen as we go from there. So, Illusionists, as you said, are here about deception, and the way they wrote the Adept's Way essay is it's for the benefit of everybody because it makes you begin to trust your senses and so forth.
Skepticism.
But some illusionist
legitimate
skepticism. And some illusionist spells aren't all illusions. They have to have some that work just to keep you on your toes. So, of course, the important attributes are charisma, because you got to sell that. Perception and willpower, because you're a spellcaster. And that's big D, big U, big H. They got to happen there. And the karma ritual I love for the illusionist is that it's not the same karma ritual every single time.
No. The karma ritual that is presented that was originally presented in first edition and was carried over all the way up to fourth is that the Illusionist, this particular karma ritual, is not the same every time. That it's all about the performance, and it's very kind of like stage magician-y in its presentation. Is that they need to have an audience or an assistant and like convince the assistant of the deadly seriousness of this ritual. But it involves like patter and snappy banter and tricks and showy spells and stuff like that. And, and convince the assistant that, you must perform this exactly. And so it's all about the presentation and the show and, and that kind of thing. So it's very stage magician-esque, in that sense. And it's kind of cool.
So, I have an off question for you. Are you a Doug Henning fan or a David Copperfield fan? I like Doug Henning. I just find him a little cooler than Copperfield. That's all. I know. That's a pull from the 70s
That's a deep pull.
That's a deep reach.
I will say I think probably my favorite stage magician is Teller of Penn and Teller.
Good reach.
I like Penn and Teller are good as an
Yes.
act, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for Teller as a scholar. He's the quiet one. As a scholar and performer and like student of stage magic history and sleight of hand and all of that sort of thing. If there's a fantastic like hour-long profile that A&E did on him a few years back. That has been, I've seen it like pass by on YouTube from time to time. And they actually are like, if you see interviews of him where he's not in character and he's actually like talking and stuff, he's a fascinating guy and really,
I would imagine so.
And really, really interesting. And I love their show, Fool Us.
Yes.
Where they bring other magicians on to do tricks in front of them and they try and figure out how they did it. Anyway.
So we just gave you 4 reaches right there on at least examples of how to play an illusionist to a certain degree, without even going into David Blaine or whoever else.
Well, the only thing that I can think of with Doug Henning is the mustache and the paperboy cap.
And the rainbow shirt?
Was he the rainbow shirt guy? No, I'm just always thinking of the mustache. He had the very 70s. The very late 60s, early 70s counterculture kind of mustache.
Totally. So yeah, deep reaches on all the illusion stage magicians. So artisan skills, again, for most of the magicians are acting and robe embroidery because that's how they get their spell matrices.
Acting for the illusionist, obviously, because they've got to sell the performance. Robe embroidery because it is traditional as far as the old school style of having the matrices woven into and their spells woven into their robes. Although for an illusionist, that may not be something that you want to do if you're not trying to advertise the fact that you're an illusionist. Or perhaps you could even have your embroidery indicate that you maybe are not an illusionist, but perhaps have sigils and designs that are more wizardly or elementalist or whatever in style.
Totally.
The Rensel, the elf illusionist from my long-term Riders on the Storm campaign, who appears in a couple of examples in the player's guide, was an illusionist. He took embroidery as his skill. His grimoire, to like tie into the stage magician thing here, his grimoire was handkerchiefs, each of which were inscribed with the runes for the spell. They were all knotted together, and he kept them up his sleeve. So when he needed to access his grimoire, he would be pulling a string of handkerchiefs out of the sleeve of his robe.
I was expecting like maybe playing cards as in like pick a card.
His was handkerchiefs.
One of those like card tricks. Yeah, but handkerchiefs is even better. I just like all of that. Either one of those would be good, but handkerchiefs is just this extra level of cool. So my head is off to you, sir, or ma'am.
He was a he.
But so they're fair. The half magic ability. Illusionists make half magic tests to recognize different types of magic use, as well as specific uses of illusion magic, and they also make half magic when attempting to perceive truth of a given situation. That I think is nice, that they can pierce the veil and go, there it is, right there. Yep. I see through that. Nice use of half magic. It's a wonderful thing to have for someone can identify the veracity of a situation. So they, of course, get a durability of 3 because they're a spellcaster. And their 2 free talents, as we've covered many times before, are both the standard matrix that you don't have to spend legend points on. Can if you want to, but you don't have to. And they just rise with your circle as you go from there. So let's dive into the discipline talents, shall we? And these are, of course, just alphabetical as everything else is listed. So false sight.
We talked about this with the thief a couple of weeks back. False sight is a talent that allows the illusionist to increase the difficulty number to sense their illusions. Any spell or talent that has the illusion keyword can be enhanced with false sight in order to... Every illusion has a sensing difficulty, and they're provided on a table in the rulebook. Using false sight allows you to increase that difficulty number, making it more difficult for somebody to, through interacting with it, to notice that it is an illusion.
Yep, disbelieve it. So that raises the, I disbelieve. No.
It's not even a disbelief. So let's say, for example, to talk really briefly here about illusions. Illusionist has a spell at first circle called Monstrous Mantle. This is like we talked about this in the question actually last week. Bread and butter illusionist boosting spell. It basically makes the target of their spell look more bulked up and nasty and whatever.
Fearsome.
Provides a bonus to physical defense, provides a bonus to attack and to damage.
Yes. It's an awesome
Whenever
spell.
an enemy is trying to hit the person that is affected by that spell, that attack test basically counts as an attempt for them to notice that it is an illusion. Like if they roll well enough, they can sense, I hit, but I noticed that my sword actually went through further before it actually connected with them. They're affected by an illusion. The illusion no longer has any effect against them, so they lose the bonuses and whatnot. That's one of the things about illusion spells. They tend to provide a little bit higher bonuses than you would get for other spells, but there is a chance that they could be eliminated without the use of Dispel Magic or something along those lines. What false sight does is it basically increases that target number, that threshold, for somebody to notice that it is an illusion.
Gotcha.
If you've got the book right there, I don't have it to the right page, but what's the difficulty for? It's right before you get into the list of spells in the player's guide. There's the table that's got and all of my stuff has stuff blocking the way, so I can't grab it.
Fair.
But there's I want to use actual concrete numbers here real quickly. Again,
So
preparation.
Dispel difficulty table or sensing difficulty table, right?
Sensing
there.
difficulty
Illusions.
table, which is on page
266.
266. There it is. Yep. So the sensing difficulty for a Circle 1 spell is 16. If someone is affected by Monstrous Mantle, and they are hit by the opponent and the opponent rolls a 15 or less, then they don't sense it's an illusion. If they roll a 16 or more, then they sense it's an illusion and the illusion is dissipated.
Yeah.
Using false sight, the illusionist could boost that sensing difficulty to a 17 or an 18 or a 19 or whatever based on the result of their... Because it basically allows them to make even their lower circle illusions able to withstand the higher rolls that would be made by higher powered opponents later on.
Yeah. So
that's what that does. It is for illusionists, it is really important and something to not forget that you have. Got. Because...
Yeah, because every success they roll adds a +2
to that sensing difficulty. Yep.
Sensing difficulty. So that's bread and butter for an illusionist. Bump up every single illusion you've got with that.
Certainly, especially if...
And false sight.
It does.
What do you do?
So you may not be using it a lot early on, but when you get a few circles under your belt and you are maybe using some older some lower circle spells, but it's more likely that they will be noticed, then you may want to boost them with false sight.
Totally. But you at least are making a roll for that, so the chance of exploding dice and karma.
Yeah, you can get karma on there, you can get exploding, all that sort of fun stuff in there.
All kinds of things. So, good to use. First impression.
Illusionists have...
Also very good for an illusionist to have.
Illusionists, out of the 4 core magician disciplines, have more social stuff, which makes sense given their presentation and interactions and use of, and their style of magic and things like that. So first impression, really, really good. Whether you're playing with a sort of honest, skeptic type illusionist who is interested in helping people, understand and discover the truth, or someone who is perhaps more underhanded and sneaky, illusionists in general can make kind of good bad guys in opposition. They can.
Yes.
The first impression basically allows you to put that good foot forward to begin with to make people more favorably inclined toward you.
Exactly. So, because every once in a while, maybe somebody's been caught by an illusionist before, so they have a negative inkling already. So if you announce that you are an illusionist, they're already going to be set off on the wrong attitude to have towards you. So yes, first impression is good to have. Then pattern craft. This is how you learn spells. This is the rewrite of read and write.
Not only learn spells, but other magical study and things like that.
Yeah. And then you've got basically the last three. I mean, pattern craft, spell casting, and thread weaving.
Right. That's if you're a magician, those are you need those for if you're going to cast spells.
Those are not options. You have to have those. So those are in there. Anyway, so moving on to second circle, they of course get the +1 to a mystic defense.
Yep. As a spellcaster, that's pretty standard.
And then they get true sight. Since we talked about false sight, they get true sight at second circle.
Yes. True sight is sort of the partner to false sight. True sight basically allows you to add a bonus to your rolls to notice or see through illusions.
So it's the escalating arms race that magicians have.
Yeah. Right. I mean, illusionists, illusionists have the ability not only to make their illusions more effective, but to more effectively see through the illusions of others.
Yes. So the arms race. That's pretty much second circle. I can't see any reason to argue with any of those. Third circle, they actually get to spend a karma point on interaction tests.
Yep. Again, kind of bringing in that more social flavor that you don't see with other magicians, but is kind of key to the illusionist style.
Totally. And their discipline talent is conversation.
Yep. Another social talent.
Really playing on the interaction.
Yeah. Really playing with the interaction game, the social talents. This is the one that, first impression allows you to get that initial boost. When you're first meeting someone, conversation is the one that allows you to do a more longer term, manipulation and maintain that relationship.
Totally. Fourth circle, because we're going through these quickly. +1 to a social defense, because again, the escalating arms race.
Right. Yep. It makes sense for the illusionist as the most social one to get that bonus.
And disguise self, an appropriate place for it to be, since you should have had your foundation, your true sight, your conversation developed before you learn how to disguise yourself to be not looking like yourself.
Right. And disguise self was available as an option to thieves. There is, the illusionist has overlap with the thief in some respects, or it's more like the thief has some stuff that overlaps with illusionist.
Yes.
And the illusionist has a little bit that overlaps with troubadour in terms of the social. They don't have the full suite of amazing social manipulation stuff that the troubadour has, but they have other ways of doing that manipulation basically through their illusion magic. And so disguise self, we talked about with the thief, allows the adept to appear as someone other than themselves, including changing their size to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they can change their size and erase to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Not a huge extent, but a certain extent.
I mean, a Tiskrang would have a hard time appearing as anything other than a Tiskrang. And other races would have a hard time appearing as a Tiskrang because you can't grow the full-size tail.
Mm-hmm.
Appearing as an Obsidiman or an Obsidiman changing their shape, their size, would be a little bit difficult, although you've got the troll that you can kind of go with for there.
Yeah.
But, even then, even if you can't necessarily appear as another race just because of who you are, obviously it's very difficult for a Windling to appear as anything else than a Windling.
Yes.
Using disguise self. But you can look completely different from what you otherwise look like.
Yeah. You can change skin tone, hairstyle, hair color, dress, whatever you're wearing, all of that. So you can look like a completely different Windling or a completely different Obsidian or a completely different Tiskrang. But most of the other races aren't too difficult.
Right.
Too difficult, within reason. But again, it's a talent. Roll it. Get some exploding dice and go to town. And see what happens. So again, first four circles, discipline talents, nice core, good foundation. Let's get to some options. My favorite one, arcane mutterings.
We've talked about this in the past. It's
peanut butter sandwiches.
Yeah, it's a fairly standard, and it plays really nicely with the illusionist in terms of it's the distracting one. One of the things that you can do as an illusionist, if you are going to be the type of illusionist who is going to pretend more often to be to be a different spellcasting discipline, is to pick up optional talents that are common to that other discipline. so that you can sort of present that way. Like Arcane Mutterings is very useful to present either as a wizard or a nethermancer. Not quite so much elementalist, though I think they do get it as an option. Yes. But like that is a talent that is kind of along those lines. But again, Arcane Mutterings is also a nice, just general like social distraction thing, which plays nicely with the Illusionist as it is, even if you're not going to be going with that role-playing route.
Yeah. Arcane Mutterings as a talent is almost like the spell of just any kind of it's a verbal illusion. That's all. It's all a peanut butter sandwich is just to confuse and distract you. So, yes. And elementalists do get arcane mutterings, so absolutely could present that way as well. Astral Sight, which I think is a duh for spellcasters to get.
Yeah, pretty straightforward for any spellcaster to have available. Unlike wizards, where it does kind of play really strongly into their like studying magic as magic idea. It's not as necessary for illusionists. They may not care about the magical patterns or magical study things quite so much.
But it's nice.
But it's generally useful and would make sense with their study of magic and patterns and so forth that they do have, that it would be something that would be available to certain members of the discipline.
Absolutely. And then, of course, everyone gets awareness. They get it as an option.
Awareness, pretty standard. Yep.
Love that one there. And one of my favorites to use, Deadfall, again, overlaps with the Thief.
Yeah, we talked about this with the Thief. Allows the Illusionist to play dead, effectively. It doesn't last for very long, but it would last... It generally lasts long enough when it's successful that the Illusionist can then sort of make a getaway. We talked about the problems with this when we talked about the Thief. It generally tends to only work once for some groups.
Yes.
Like, as soon as they realize that, oh, we thought he was dead, and then he came back again and he used Deadfall, now we, like, hack every person that we want to make sure is dead into pieces.
Scatter the remains.
Scatter the remains. The magic of Deadfall is sort of intended to give the Illusionist a chance to get away if that's what they're after. But the other thing that it can do is, even for a player character Illusionist, to do, like, if they are getting hammered on by an enemy, to do Deadfall and have the enemy, to basically save your life and to have the enemy like turn away, and then possibly, hey, if you're going with like a dual discipline Illusionist Thief, that can be a really great way to regain surprise.
Totally.
and to get in a new surprise strike or something like that. So that's a possibility. Or, I mean, even without the Thief benefit of surprise strike, they thought you were dead. They are not paying attention to you anymore. That allows you to gain an advantage.
Yes.
In a combat situation, potentially.
My Thief did that. He ran in first and actually used Deadfall to let the bad guy know that, we were a very easy to handle party. And so I died first, air quotes. And he ignored me, and I did exactly that. The rest of my team came in after that. All fun was had. We won. Moving on to the next talent option is Mimic Voice, which goes along with the Disguise Self. Yep. But this is an option.
Yeah. This is an option only because there wasn't a discipline talent place to put it.
Fair.
If you are going to be going with a very, like, deceptive con artist, thief slanted illusionist, Mimic Voice goes along with Disguise Self really well, and it's probably worth dropping into an option slot somewhere.
Yes, totally. And then Speak Language.
Speak Language, very handy to have for an illusionist. Again, especially if you're going to be going with the performer route or the sort of con artist deception route, because if you are going to be pretending to be somebody else using Disguise Self, Mimic Voice, and things like that, it can be awfully handy to know how to speak different languages.
Yes. If you're going to pretend to be an orc, speak orc.
Or to understand other languages so that you can perhaps pick up on when people might be trying to deceive you by speaking among themselves in a language that they might not realize that you know.
Totally.
It's also a nice supplement for any kind of scholarly type spellcaster, if you're going to be going a little bit more in the academic route. Although they tend to focus a little bit more on read-write language as opposed to speak language. It still can be particularly handy and goes in with the social aspect and social theme of the Illusionist.
Standard Matrix, which of course is if you want to start off with 3.
Yep. Your additional matrix, so you can have 3 standard matrices to start off, or that you can pick up and have a third spell anywhere within your novice tier.
Yeah, lovely to have that. Love the option. The 4th edition wrinkle of the third matrix possibility at first circle is awesome. And then Stealthy Stride, which is again just moving quietly, moving silently, because sometimes illusionists need to do not that. Be noticed.
And the talent is illusion based or has some illusion magic that goes along with it.
Yes.
And so, makes sense for that to be available.
Cool. 2 more to go. Taunt, which is an interesting choice for an illusionist to have.
Well, because illusionists do tend to have higher charisma, and, having that sort of entertainer or talky sub-theme that kind of goes along with them, taunt is really useful, can be really useful in combat to distract opponents, to make them more effective. It's kind of in the way that Arcane Mutterings is kind of a distraction talent useful outside of combat. Taunt is a similar one that you can do in combat, and it penalizes opponents and opens them up to be smacked by your beefier companions.
And you should have some beefier companions because you are squishy. Very, very squishy. And of course, the perfect one for an illusionist to have as an option is Winning Smile.
Yes, another social talent, that if you're going to be going with a more sort of social face type character, can come in very handy in terms of continuing to manipulate the NPC attitude social game.
Face type? You'd be like face from the A-Team face?
Yes.
Love it. Good reference.
Yeah.
Pull.
That's, well, I mean, so like we talked about the troubadour being like the social character, often the one that is at the front of the group talking and negotiating. If you don't have a troubadour, an illusionist can make if you don't have somebody else that's going to do it, an illusionist with their social sub-theme and some of the talents that they can pick up can make a very effective sort of party front man or face. That's why Face in the A-Team had the name that he does. He is the face man for the group.
Yes.
He's not the leader. He's the pretty boy. He's the face man. He's the
talker.
Yep.
I'll go make the deal. I'll go sweet talk this and that.
That's a term that's used in Shadowrun as well, as the face, the social, the social adept, the social character.
Oh yeah. I had a rigger in Shadowrun. His name was Face, as an ode to Shadowrun. But I got to stop real quick, and before we even get to the next page, the artwork for the Tiskrang Illusionist on page 98 is one of my absolute favorites out of this book. So I don't remember who did it, but it's awesome.
It's Eric Lofgren was the artist who did that.
Yeah.
And in the special edition, in the reprint of the Player's Guide, this is the one that you can tell if you have that one, because rather than having the plain white page background, it has the sort of kind of parchment colored background.
Yes.
I did some fancy stuff and had some parts of the image be transparent and some not. And so the paper background shows through in some parts, and in other places it's still plain white. So it has actually a really cool kind of contrasting thing that works really cool for both the fancier versions of the book and the reprint, the second printing, and for the PDF, which is now that fancier version.
Nice. No, I have the original first printing because I'm one of the Kickstarter backers. Haha, there we are.
And a lot of people do have the first one because, that was the one that was out there quite a bit, but I think we're finally just about out of the original print run.
Fair. So on to Fifth Circle. Again, a very solid first 4 circles. I can find nothing to argue with. Not that I would. But yeah, I think everything works as a discipline talent and all the options are perfect. So Fifth Circle, they get a free talent. One of the Adeptus Standard Matrices, of course, upgrades to Enhanced, like it does for, I think, everybody.
Like it does for all magicians.
Yep. And then they get the Karma bonus. I'm going to skip over the other thing real quick. They get the Karma bonus. They can add +2 to a spell's effect step when they spend a point of Karma. And it lasts for this full spell duration, even if it has multiple effect tests. And they get Glamour for 2 points of strain. The Adept creates a clearly illusory scene to delight and entertain onlookers as a standard action. The Adept makes an illusionism test against the highest social defense in the crowd, which, by the way, is the thread weaving, correct?
Yes, illusionism is their thread weaving.
Cool. If successful, the Adept gains a +2 to making an impression test for a number of hours equal to the successes scored. So they get to
this is basically where,
onlookers.
Along with first impression, the talent, and some other stuff. But this is basically where they use their magic. They use clearly, create some basically the Tiskrang in that picture that you were just talking about. He is using glamour to make that dragon thingy appear over his hand. Right? Yeah. That is clearly an illusion, but he is basically using that as, hey, here is a, fancy display and a show of my power, and hey, aren't I cool kind of thing. And
it's not a specific spell. It's just here's me manipulating.
Yeah, basically like an illusionist,
a light show.
Like in fiction, in fiction and pop culture, it is common for especially illusionist type characters to be able to just whip up little fancy things on a whim. And because of the way that spells work in Earthdawn, it's not really suited for that to be a spell, and it's not really worthwhile for making that like a full like talent on its own. So it's just a thing that they get.
Yes.
It's just a neat little sort of flavorful
You've reached this
with a little
level,
bit of a magical, mechanical benefit.
Yeah, you've reached this level of proficiency with being able to just conjure a light show or manipulate light into whatever you want it to look like. I liken this to the character of Mysterio in Spider-Man, I think Far From Home, the movie. Jake Gyllenhaal plays the character. Again, lots of illusory magic in that whole thing. It's all a light show and reflected holograms and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, stuff like that. So, otherwise, at 5th Circle, they get the discipline talent of Power Mask. This is one we've not talked about before.
I think actually it has popped up, but we didn't really talk about it in depth. This basically allows the adept to hide the fact that they are an adept.
Oh, right. This goes back to, Wizards, I think, get this one. So it's been a long time since we've talked about this.
Wizards get this, I think, as an option. But yeah, they can basically hide their nature from detection, whether magical or mundane, their magical nature.
Yes.
Basically, they present a false aura that prevents others from noticing that they are an adept, and in addition, hides any obvious magical effects on them as well. So, this is one that, because one of the drawbacks of illusions, especially illusion spells, is that they are spells, and if you examine them astrally, there is a decent chance that you will notice that it is an illusion.
Yes.
Okay. Power Mask basically allows you to hide the fact that, so if you are using the talent Disguise Self,
yes,
there is a magical effect. There is an astral effect that would be visible on you as a result of the use of that talent that somebody who has astral sight and examines you could potentially see through.
Yes.
Okay? Basically, the fact that they are examining you astrally, and that counts as a sensing test against the difficulty to see through the illusion. Power Mask basically allows you to hide the fact that you have that illusion effect on you in the first place.
Yep.
That basically you can present an aura that then mimics the illusion that you are putting forward.
Yeah.
Just adding an additional difficulty.
So now you're good enough to hide it.
Yeah, basically. It becomes an additional, Power Mask is not an illusion in and of itself.
No.
So
you're literally dampening your astral.
Right. And so you can appear as a normal person. If somebody looks at you astrally, it is possible that they can see through the mask if they roll well enough on their astral sensing test.
Fair.
But if they see through that Power Mask and you have another illusion in place behind it, they might not they would then have to sort of look further to potentially see through it. So it's basically like another layer of protection.
Yes.
Over your attempts to disguise or hide your any kind of illusory nature or whatever it is you might be doing.
Or your illusory self.
Right.
Whatever self you want to hide, Power Mask lets
exactly.
you do it.
Yes.
There's the phrase. If whatever self you want to hide, Power Mask lets you do it. Okay. Had to get that one down again. On to 6th Circle. They, of course, get the +2 Mystic Defense.
An additional Mystic Defense bonus.
Yep. And Will Force, because
Will Force, the standard magician 6th Circle talent, which is basically allows you to substitute Will Force talent in place of your Willpower in any spell effect test, which basically allows you at that point to start spending karma on effect tests that have a Will Force effect roll and a bunch of other stuff.
And it automatically has some oomph, because whatever rank you put in it is automatically added to your willpower. So congratulations. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's just, that's your oomph, and enjoy that. 7th Circle, you get a +1 to your initiative, finally. So you get to go hopefully first, or at least closer to first. And then Hypnotize, which again is that stage magic.
Magic, yeah. This is the pop culture Hypnotize, which is to say that you can basically put someone into a trance and put post-hypnotic suggestions in place to have them do something for you at an indicated time or at an indicated trigger kind of thing.
Or just forget the number 8 because it's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, actual actual hypnosis does not really work that way.
I know, I'm just kidding.
But pop culture hypnosis does, and this being an adventure game, that's the kind of thing that you would want. And hypnotize can actually last for a while.
Well, and this is a whole lot more fun.
Yeah.
Real
it's got an effective duration for the post-hypnotic suggestion of hours. So the example that's in there is Renzel, who we were talking about earlier, is talking with a guard who's off duty and uses the hypnotize talent to basically give Renzel an opportunity later on to let him past or something along those lines.
Yeah. 8th circle, because we're getting there awfully fast. They get another bonus to their mystic defense because, again, spellcaster, and you're going to need that. And hold thread, which again is a spellcasting,
which is the standard, the standard magician, spellcasting associated talent. I think everybody gets hold thread at 8th circle. It's kind of another of those tools that further enhances what the magician can do with their spells.
Yeah, the only one who doesn't get it at 8th circle is wizard. They get suppressed curse, but however, they get hold thread at 7th circle.
They get it a circle earlier than everybody else.
One circle earlier, but it's otherwise fine. No big deal. Otherwise, the talent options that they get beginning at 5th circle: conceal object, again right up the alley for illusionists.
Yep, deception, misdirection, hiding stuff. We don't need to. Again, thieves get it. We talked about it just a couple of weeks ago.
Totally. That's where they overlap.
Pretty straightforward in terms of why they might have it as an option.
I can see the thief stealing the concealing object from the illusionist kit, so I see that entirely. Dispel magic, because I think all magicians should get that.
Certainly have it as an option. Wizards get it as a discipline talent because it is core to sort of their shtick of being able to mess with magic as magic. But having it as an option if you are going with a more spellcastery, or again, like I was talking about with maybe picking up optional talents that allow you to masquerade as a magician of another discipline, having Dispel Magic. Having Dispel Magic in your kit is just a generally useful talent to have if you can have that available. It is a little bit more limited in terms it can only affect spells and talents. It can't affect other stuff, but that's still really useful.
It so is. And then going back to the social aspect, because they've got conversation as a discipline talent, and they've got
winning smile as an option. They've got first impression as a discipline talent at first. Yep.
And then journeyman talent option, they got engaging banter.
Yep. Not given their other social talents, especially with arcane mutterings, they don't really need engaging banter as a discipline talent. But if you're going to be going with the social type, it's certainly not a bad one to have in your bag of tricks.
I was just going to use the exact same phrase. Enhanced Matrix, because, of course, they should get an Enhanced Matrix at 5th circle or higher. So,
again, they basically get access to another spell matrix if you're going to be going with one that is going to be focusing more on having lots of spells, and you want to have more ready to go. You can seldom go wrong by having more matrices.
Yes. And then, of course, going along with Conceal Object, Fast Hand, another little
Fast
thief.
Hand we talked about with the thief. That allows you to basically swap things around secretly and quickly.
Frighten, which I think is interesting for an illusionist to have, but incredibly useful, because instead of just the party tricks and the flashy light show,
is a good talent.
I think this is a good one.
Yeah. Again, another one like Frighten is typically associated with the Nethermancer. So if you are going to perhaps be masquerading as another discipline, that might be one to pick up if you're going to be going that route. But I mean, Frighten is, in a sense, from an illusionist standpoint, the way they would present Frighten would be the actual frightening illusion, as opposed to drawing on the gloom of the grave and dark spirits the way that an Ethermancer would. But the ability for an illusionist to use their illusions to frighten or terrify or make targets quake in their boots and wet their shorts. It certainly is something that would be available to the appropriate follower of the discipline.
Exactly. Moving on to Resist Taunt, because, of course, if you have Taunt as an option...
Yeah, if you're going to be a socially focused character, Resist Taunt can be awfully handy to have, because it allows you to potentially resist other social targeting effects, like First Impression or Taunt or anything along those lines.
Yeah, so it's the escalating arms race once again. 3 to go. Slough Blame.
We talked about that.
In the Illusionists kit.
Oh, yeah.
No, that wasn't me. That was them. Haha.
Yeah.
See?
Absolutely.
What illusionist or stage magician would not use that? That's it would almost be. I'm not sure what to remove out of the discipline talents, but that would almost be a discipline talent in my eyes. Steal thought, because again, a magician should have steal thought.
Yeah, a magician, having that as an option if you are going to be going with a more like magic focused illusionist, one who might be sort of an investigator, and trying to pierce other illusions or to see through deceptions and whatnot. There are, powers and effects and spells that would be targeting mystic defense, and having an active defense against them is definitely worthwhile.
Yep. And lastly, because of course they're a spellcaster, Tenacious Weave.
Tenacious Weave pairs very nicely with the False Sight. Tenacious Weave basically allows the magician to make their spells harder to dispel. Because illusionists do have some real spells in their repertoire. So, having that to make it more difficult for, if somebody's not going to be going with the sense seeing through illusions and maybe like a wizard trying to brute force a dispel magic, you don't need to know that it's an illusion spell if you can just dispel it.
Yes.
And so being able to increase the resilience of your spells to make them more resistant to being dispelled and disrupted can be certainly something worthwhile if you're going to be going with a spell-based kit.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the first eight circles of illusionists, and there's a lot of overlap with, as you said, thieves, and a lot of overlap, of course, with the other spellcasters, which is why this one went rather quickly.
Little bit of overlap with
the same talents.
Little bit of overlap in terms of with the troubadour, in terms of some of the social aspects and performance aspects that they have. Illusionist troubadours complement each other very, very nicely. If you do get to the point where you might be looking at multidiscipline combinations.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of talents that sort of overlap there, and things that you might want to have taken as an illusionist show up in the troubadour kit and vice versa. So they can complement each other very nicely. Illusionist thief, because we talked about how there's a lot of overlap with some of the thief abilities and how some of the thief talents have illusion aspects to them. And so you could then, instead of you get false sight as a discipline talent as an illusionist. So it wouldn't need to pick it up as a thief if you're going to be going with that route. And again, the ideas of deception and whatnot pair very nicely with each other. So those are kind of two really popular cooperative disciplines if you're looking at a multidiscipline combination. Illusionists, because of the complexity that can be involved with illusion magic and some of the things that are in the illusionists spell list, which we aren't going to be getting into here, but anybody who has looked at it will kind of know what we're referring to. Illusionists, kind of like wizards, tend to be a bit more intellectual and thinky and reward clever and intelligent play on the part of the player in terms of taking a look at the tools that you have and how you can use them to manipulate the situation to your advantage. But where a wizard would have a much more sort of direct, raw, intellectual hatchet to a problem, the illusionist is a much more finesse and maybe getting around the problem rather than cutting right through it with magical brute force.
Yes.
But yeah, illusionists can definitely... sort of the four core disciplines, you've got the wizard and illusionist tend to be a bit more thinky and rewarding, like a little bit more thinky and theoretical and esoteric
planning
in their own way and planning, whereas the elementalist and neithermancer, who we haven't talked about yet but will be shortly, have a little bit more practical and grounded approach to things because of spirits in part, but because of the other stuff that they have and their general theme. Neithermancers do have a little bit of the esoteric, but it's more in the sense of we are exploring realms beyond. I said we.
Josh's side gig.
Like exploring the distant realms and the lands beyond, but there is still something very practical to that in the terms of understanding the denizens and the things that inhabit that place and might come into our realm as a result.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit less of a theoretical aspect of that you would get with a wizard compared to another mancer. But yeah, illusionists can make really good investigators, despite the there is traditionally a strong philosophical antagonism and rivalry between illusionists and archers, because archers are very strongly perceptive, but also very direct and traditionally very direct and plain spoken, and don't have much call for artifice and
beating
whatever.
around the bush.
Like the archer essay from Adept's Way basically talks about, like, illusionists are trash and they are awful and I hate them because that archer is very direct and whatever. And the illusionist essay doesn't really respond to that at all. But, like, there is potentially that antagonism, but I am suddenly, like, calling to mind of an illusionist archer buddy cop situation. like a Murtaugh and Riggs, or,
no, that's good.
Like, that would be, like, like a Holmes and Watson, like, elementary kind
Butch and Sundance.
But yeah, that would actually be really interesting.
That should be in a novel somewhere. It really should.
Yeah, like as a multidiscipline thing, illusionists and archers,
novel.
Like an illusionist archer is like would be really, really hard to square that circle.
Yes.
But as two individuals, it could be potentially a very interesting dynamic in there.
It's kind of like Thor and Loki.
Yeah,
if you watch the Marvel movies, Thor is very straightforward. He's not exactly an archer, but he's incredibly straightforward and speaks his mind. And Loki is absolutely conniving and illusory magic the entire way.
He is a bad illusionist.
Yes.
Like, I mean, he's a great illusionist, but he's a bad guy.
He's an evil illusionist.
Illusionists can make really good investigators because they tend to have the high perception. They are, because of their notion of deception and seeing through artifice, and
things aren't always what they seem.
And truth and lies and things not always what they seem, can be very... that's why I was thinking, like, the archer illusionist buddy cop situation, where they both can make really effective investigators, but they approach them from very different directions.
Oh, they'll both make the astute observation. It's just a matter of how they get to that point.
Right. Yeah, illusionists are cool. Illusion magic is a little bit funky and can always raise some questions, but it's cool. I think a good chunk of what we did with them in 4th edition kind of cleaned up some of the questionable / annoying edge cases that would show up in terms of disbelief and stuff like that.
Lingering questions. And any lingering questions about how all that works.
Yeah, in terms of bizarre timing of how things work. But no, I really like illusionists. In all honesty, I like all magicians. I think illusionists are probably 3rd on the list, like 5. Tied with elementalist, if, like, for my personal thing. But I've seen them played very effectively, and I can certainly understand why some game masters don't like having them, because illusion magic can be such a headache to adjudicate.
Fair. No, like I said, my player who plays an illusionist, I happen to be playing a character in that game as well, so he and I are buddies. And everything he did, his character kind of glommed onto my character, and everything he did made me look really, really awesome, more so than I actually was. But if I hit somebody, he would follow up immediately with their version of Magic Missile. It's the
Ephemeral Bolt.
Thank you. I can remember the word of it. It's a big esoteric word. So he would use the Ephemeral Bolt after that. Then I would hit the target again. And then they would use True Ephemeral Bolt after that as well. So they just made me look awesome. So it was just one of those, he paired with me, and we did pretty well that way. But then his other illusion magic would just come into play at other times as well. So
yeah, when
done right, and the player involved in that is very heady, very well thought out, very planning in how these spells could work in any situation. Yeah, if you're the right player for an illusionist, man, you will have a blast.
It can shine if you can be creative with the tools that you've got on hand, and have a game master that is willing to go along with you on that. It can be really rewarding to be an illusionist. And like we had mentioned sort of in the course of our discussion here, they can make really effective facemen, frontmen for a group, with their social talents and, generally higher charisma, and stuff like that. No, illusionists are cool, and illusions as magic, are something that has been in fantasy gaming for quite a while. So it absolutely has a place, even if it can be a little headache inducing at times.
Oh, totally. They're supposed to be, but that's the whole point of illusions.
I want to close out with one last story. We'll come back to Renzel, the elf illusionist. We've got so many stories about this player, not just from his time as the illusionist in the Earthdawn game. He was a character in an Ars Magica game who had some amazing, bizarre stuff that happened. He's a great guy. Anyway, there was one situation where, like, the group woke up one morning and they were sitting around in their home. At that point, they were fairly advanced in their career and had actually gotten rewarded because of their service to the king of Thrall with property in one of the inner cities. So they had a house that was theirs, basically.
Nice.
And they woke up and were sitting around talking one morning and just role-playing in character or whatever. And Renzel basically, as they were discussing, said to one of the other characters at that point, "Oh, by the way, how are your eggs?" And the character goes, "Oh, no, they're great." And then Renzel's response is, "They're not real, Just complete, in the character discussion, they're going on. It's "Oh, by the way, how are the eggs?" "Oh, they're great." "Well, they're not real, I was working on not just the visual aspects of an illusion, but also the texture and taste and other sensory senses,
totally.
Things that go along. And it just, I think people cracked up probably for a good 5 minutes as a result of that.
Nice. Absolutely.
That's that's the sort of thing as an illusionist that you can live for, it's cool. By all means,
do it. I love it. Yeah, so Josh and I'll be co-writing that whole novel about the archer and I'm just kidding. When it's slated.
Yes, I will in my copious free time.
Once he clones himself, I have the novel about the cavalryman.
I may, I may, because I'm starting some work on a source book that I'm going to be creative lead and one of the primary writers on. I may have NPCs that are an archer and illusionist buddy cop.
Nice
thing. I think that would be kind of cool.
Tap me, I'll contribute. Otherwise, folks, I think that wraps it up for the Illusionist. I think we've gone on long enough. We've tapped just about an hour or so. And any questions, by all means, feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. But otherwise, it is time for you to go make your own illusory legend.
Fake legend.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. Good night, everybody.